Hey everyone, meteorologist Robert Spetta here. I am with meteorologist Mike Adcock, also Heather and Jeff from Okinawa Typhoon and Pix, a really fantastic Facebook page if you are from Okinawa and watching from there as well. If you guys want to say something before we get started.
Waiting for Mike to talk, sorry.
All right.
Hi, everyone.
Hey,
Yeah,
everybody.
as soon as
Hi from
the video
Okinawa.
start. Oh yeah, and that's going to be one of the big questions. Actually, we're going to be talking about here is Okinawa going to be impacted by the storm system? When you were mentioning earlier, there's actually some showers already coming through there at some of the outer rain bands. Also, another big question is how is this storm going to be impacting Taiwan? And for some part, how it is in the Philippines. And all three of those areas we're really keeping a close eye on. The first thing I'm actually going to do, pull up the satellite picture and just give everybody who's watching and maybe just starting to get some new information on this storm a relative idea of where it is. Now, here you have our typhoon. Typhoon Nepartak, actually Bochoy in the Philippines, it's being called out there, 02W, according to the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. By the way, Nepartak is the Micronesian warrior. Some people find that kind of interesting where these words come from. Outer rain band still on the northern periphery, probably going to be impacting the southern Japanese islands starting tomorrow morning. This is expected to make landfall, though, in Taiwan. Now, that's just over here overnight Thursday into Friday morning. And the other big thing we've been talking about is that enhanced monsoonal flow out here across the Philippines. Here's your latest warning information, though, from the Japan Meteorological Agency. It's a violent typhoon. Actually, pressure down to 900 hectopascals this afternoon. I know we were all pretty surprised by this. 900, it's basically... once you hit that 9th century mark, this is saying that there's a major storm system on, and ears just peak up. That would be on a Category 4 equivalent on the Saffir-Simpson scale, but reality is JMA is a little bit lower with their wind speeds. I would say upwards about a Category 5 equivalent here. Actually, JTWC has it as a Category 5 equivalent according to their warning, and they're expecting it to near landfall as a Category 5 here in Taiwan. So definitely damaging winds. The good news, the southwestern islands of Japan used to those high winds, but the rain is going to be one of the major issues here, especially with the mountains out there. And not to mention, a little bit later on, we'll talk to you about what's going on in China because there has been some severe flooding. But first, let's talk about the preparations and everything already being made for this storm system. Actually, what's going on there in Okinawa there, Jeff and Heather?
Well, not a whole lot, honestly, going on right now. The weather officials on the base obviously have figured out from the forecast that we are not going to be getting destructive winds. So there have been no T-core changes or anything of the sort. We've been warning people on our page just to use this as a reason to have their basic typhoon prep ready to go, build a typhoon kit, all the things that they'll need for typhoon season. But we're really not expecting to get much more than some strong thunderstorms at times, maybe. Winds up to maybe, 30 miles an hour, perhaps a little more in the gusts, but nothing too severe.
And rains mostly.
Yeah, I think one of the big things you often talk about there in Okinawa, especially with the military, is a lot of light objects, and every time we always see typhoons flying.
Yeah.
And I actually seen on your guys' page earlier today, you were mentioning things like that still need to be tied down, even if there's not a T-core, right?
It's always the trampolines. We warn people that if you're going to have a trampoline in the yard, you need to get the anchors and bolt that thing down and just keep it that way year-round. Because even when we've had isolated thunderstorms come through, those things go airborne, and then we get some great pictures being sent to us of how they've been eaten by a tree or, that sort of thing.
Actually, if any of you don't know the Heather and Jeff's Facebook page, do check it out. This is actually just some of the images. They do have kind of a light side of the storm system, still very serious information being put out there, and really just a good mix between the two. And there's some of the stuff there, a little top hat on this storm. And yeah, this is... it's a really good, useful information, especially if you are there in Okinawa. They really do field a lot of good questions out there. So, Mike, you were just talking to me a second ago about the latest, oops, that's the wrong, the latest Dvorak on this storm system, and what's the intensity right now? Do you have any of that information up?
Um, Most of it's actually just went away, but a little bit ago at 6Z, the latest Dvorak analysis from JTWC, and you should be getting the 9Z one here shortly, having some issues with their website, but it was a little weaker, at least in terms of the data intensity, or a snapshot in time. It got up to a T5, 7.5, which would equate to roughly 150 knots. It has since weakened a little bit, but and more on the meteorological geeky side, usually when a storm starts to weaken a little bit, they maintain the current intensity. You know, it may look like it's weakening on satellite, but it maintains that intensity for a little bit.
Actually, we're just talking about the possibility of an eye wall replacement cycle. And that's why I pulled up right before we went live. Actually, I pulled this up, and I like using my green screen here. By the way, that's what this is behind me. If anybody kind of sees this kind of popping up, that's why it's really shady. The lighting is totally off on it. But what you can see here, actually, in the last few frames of this, I wish I could stop. You can kind of see a second eye wall forming up right there. Do you see it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So that's what we're talking about with the eye wall replacement cycle, is that inner eye wall likely getting kind of weakened out. Sometimes it just fades off automatically, and that second one pops back in on the outer side of it, and storm will weaken, sometimes even re-intensify after that.
Right. I think in this particular case, I mean, at 150 knots, you know, you're at that point where you would get eye wall replacement cycles. The good news is just with the timing, I don't anticipate this to strengthen anymore. It should be at its strongest, if not some slight weakening.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. It is moving out of that warmer sea surface temperatures and kind of, it's cooler off here towards the north. We're starting to encounter a little bit more of the westerlies kind of interacting with it as well. Actually, I'll just put this up on the screen and kind of give people an idea of how this is tracking off here towards the north. And let's see. So here we go. We got this moving off here. I think this is kind of an older JTWC track. They have it swung down a little bit further towards the south. But the big thing is that it is headed towards Taiwan. And also the big thing is the closer it gets to Taiwan, the more friction interacts with. And a lot of people often see these Category 5 storms kind of right near the island, but it's very rare to actually have them make landfall as a Category 5 because they often get just squeezed and weakened out prior to coming on shore. I mean, actually, earlier you were talking about that. We were talking about the mountains. How high were the mountain tops across here?
A large majority of them around, there was what, 200, almost 300 peaks that are above 300 meters, or about 12,000 feet. So quite a bit of elevation with these mountains.
That's here's another little view here we're talking about with Taiwan, and every time we talk about storms, just the mountain range that stretches just west of Hualien, Yilan County. I actually seen somebody on the YouTube chat here saying they are from Yilan County, a little bit farther off here towards the north. They took a pounding with Sodalore last year, by the way. That was one of the areas where you seen like mopeds flying in the streets and everything. And this is actually something, Jeff and Heather, you probably can know. In Okinawa, stuff shuts down, right? If there is a typhoon, very rarely people get out. You don't see people too often riding around on their bikes. If they are, that's where the injuries. But most time people stay in, right?
Well, quite a few of the locals tend to just do business as usual as long as the typhoon isn't too strong. Now, on the bases, we shut down. All of the military folk are asked to stay inside their homes. They're asked to not go anywhere until they're given all clear. The locals, sometimes they're just out shopping. They're doing whatever they feel.
Ah,
They feel.
That's actually the same case in Taiwan too. In fact, then in Yilan, there's tons of people just still out doing their business, and we're talking about like Category 4 strength winds coming on shore and stuff's just moving around. Actually, somebody from Yilan was commenting here. Hopefully, They actually saying "Go Elon, yoo-hoo, zoom in, zoom in." All right, there you go. So Elon definitely. That's where I seen people just out and about on the streets. I was in Sodalor last year, and it really maybe Ibis, you can attest to that if people do kind of head right out to the coastal areas. And the other big thing is a little bit further inland. Now, right near the coast here, this is definitely one major problem with the landfalling storm, but it's also inland where you get that major flood threat because, as I was saying a second ago, these mountains, they squeeze out the moisture, right? And that has to come down all at once. And sometimes you get nearly 1,000 millimeters. I mean, we were talking earlier, Mike, we were talking earlier about the, what was the storm in 2009?
That was a Morakas.
Yeah, Morakat dropped 3 meters of rainfall. Now, this is just a 96-hour rainfall accumulation with the GFS model showing how much, this is in inches, about 15 inches. But that one dropped 3 meters. Last year, Sodalor dropped 2 meters. That all comes down, and that's what really results in a lot of the flooding and landslides. This is actually another great graphic. I'll put it up. I'm just graphics galore. I'm sorry, guys. From a specific disaster center, just showing where the landslide threats are here and really up and down those mountain chains along the eastern seaboards, those areas in the darker green. So definitely pretty dangerous area there as well.
Pagasa just issued their latest advisory on the typhoon as well. No change to the signals, but they're still carrying signal 1 for Batanes up in the northern part of the island.
Here you go there, Mike, if you want to just talk in a little bit of that. What does signal 1 kind of mean?
Okay, well, signal 1 means within the next 36 hours, they expect winds from 30 to 60 kilometers per hour. So particularly with this storm, not a whole lot in terms of damage, a lot to the winds or from the winds, but rather they're expecting a lot more issues with the rainfall and then the seas as well. Right now, expecting wave heights 1.25 to 4 meters as the system passes through.
All right, so that is Batanes. Now that's northern Philippines, and this is actually one worry of mine when we do get Signal Force 1, which I think the people on Batanes definitely need Signal Force 1 warned on them. But this is actually the same issue in Japan if you're talking about Okinawa, Ishigaki, and Miyakojima getting typhoon warnings, and they're part of Okinawa Prefecture, right? So we often see that, a little bit of confusion, and I think people down in Luzon just have to remember that this is not a warning for them, and it's not going to be warned on for Luzon unless something drastically changes there. But let's talk about this, and you guys can weigh in on this as well. We're always talking about the enhanced monsoon out here. That's not the right graphic. I have too many graphics. The enhanced monsoon out here across the Philippines and really takes place. And if we actually zoom in on this, I can just show it down here towards the south. This is what's going on. So you have our low pressure area kind of off here towards the northeast, but it has to get its moisture from somewhere, and you can just follow this river that kind of flows in with the southwest monsoon off here towards the east, and this enhances those westerly winds, and that is why some of these areas, they've been getting precipitation all week, and still expecting actually upwards about 200 to 300 millimeters out there.
Some of what we've been seeing here just today have been some light showers, but we're expecting quite a few more inches coming in soon. But as the water is pulling everything in, all of the winds pulling all the water off of the Pacific, people say, oh, it's just going to die down. It's not going to be as big as we thought it was by the time it hits landfall. Well, yeah, that's not right. It's going to give us a lot more rain here in Okinawa. The much farther south islands, like Ishigaki, they're going to get much more than we are here on the main island of Okinawa, but we'll still see a lot of rain.
Yeah, I think that's one thing a lot of people do forget about is those rain bands that come in along the northern edge of this and just kind of kick around. And yeah, even off there towards the north. We've already been seeing that today. I don't have I'll pull up that satellite picture again. Oh, there we go. That's one I was looking for. Look now, just on the northern extent of this, and you can just see that big cloud cover. And this is actually earlier I was talking about this, the blob that you have coming in, and that's going to be wrapping around. So all that stream of moisture coming across the Philippines, pulling off here towards the north, and wrapping into our storm system, and another reason why it's so strong at this point. Actually, let's go back to, this is something that I find really interesting. I'm going to go back to that visible satellite imagery. You can see some shadowing inside that eye. How about that? Right there. They're right at
Oh, wow.
sunset here, so you're getting some really good shadowing. It shows how deep that is. I'm sorry, that was really random. I just seen it, figured I'd just point it out.
Yeah, that is something we've been trying to get the people on Okinawa to realize is, especially the newbies, we have so much rotation with the military personnel that we have a lot of people here on island now who've never gone through this. They're always asking what to expect. And we've been having to explain that, no, this typhoon is not going to hit us directly, but that does not mean that we're not going to get affected by it. And today we were actually posting, trying to show them just how big these typhoons are, you know, hundreds and hundreds of miles across, and that we are in a position where a lot of that rain will be coming through Okinawa. So even though we're not going to take the brunt of the storm like Taiwan, everybody here needs to be prepared for a lot of rain in the coming days.
Mike, you have anything you want to?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, outside of, we've already been talking about Taiwan, but yeah, the effects of this storm is really going to spread, not just the Philippines, but, of course, across the Ryukyus as well. Very large system in terms of rainfall. So yeah, it's definitely something that a lot of folks have to keep an eye on. Outside of the wind threat anyway.
Yeah, and I think the wind threat. So let's talk about the biggest wind threat, and you guys can jump in on this. I'm thinking Ishigaki. Now Ishigaki built 4 typhoons, right? What was it? Last year in which one was it? The one, it was the highest wind report ever recorded in Japan. It was in Ishigaki. Josh Morganman actually went through that storm. Goni? Do I want to say Goni? It was like 350 kilometers per hour. Something. It was a crazy wind gust. Or maybe I'm 100 kilometers per hour too high, 250. And the buildings there, no damage to any of the buildings, right? But cars were just piled up at like the ends of the roads. Because
that was Goni.
strong. Oh, you guys went through that one last year. Okinawa was a little bit further towards the north, but you still got some pretty good waves out of that.
We did, and we're always cautioning people to stay away from the beaches and from the seawalls because sometimes those waves can come up over the ends of the seawall and knock you off your feet and sometimes take you out to sea. We've had a number of people die here because they're not being careful and they think, oh, I'm going to go see the waves, I'm going to see the winds. Well, yeah, but when you do that, you're going to put yourself in danger.
Yeah, and that's not just a Okinawa problem. In Taiwan, that happens sometimes. Actually, last time I was one of the times not last time, but one of the times I was in Okinawa, I did a video talking about Cape Zampa there, and there's been a bunch of deaths due to people standing right along the cliff edges. Also in the Philippines, that's another thing, and that's another thing to people watching from the Philippines. We often try to talk about here because since there is no signal force warning. There's no really high wind, but there's the wave advisories, but a lot of people don't pay attention to that. And especially out here, northern areas of Luzon from Apari, it's basically extending down towards the south, they're going to get 3 to 4 meter high waves. So you get these small boats that head out to the fishing, and it's deadly. And the problem with the Philippines is that unlike a little bit further towards the north, if people don't fish, they don't eat. And that is probably why sometimes you get the casualties out there. The good news, there has been a lot more stricter warnings in place across that area. And I think we got guys from Bagasa watching. If they want to chime in on the comment section, please do. But and let us know if there are any warnings in place for fishermen specifically, or maritime warnings across that area, because that's also a big problem. Off towards the north, when people head out to the beach, it's usually for sightseeing, but down towards the Philippines, a bigger problem. Yeah. But oh, here's another comment somebody just mentioned, and it's on the satellite picture I have up here. I'll get out of the way. Over Taiwan, look at these storms blowing up already. That's that convection, that moist, and we were talking about the storms in Okinawa, right? That moisture out ahead of it. Same thing happening in Taiwan, but it's combined with the diurnal heating, the daytime heating. So just look at those storms blowing up there just along the west coast. That's pretty nasty. You see that there, Mike?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Some of that
Yeah, looking at our windows, we can see it's definitely pretty dark out that way. So.
If anybody does want to chime in, any comments on here, though, please feel free. If you guys got any comments on your Facebook page, do relay them as well, or any questions, that is. I'm just trying to get through it here. The big thing with this chat, and if you are watching, is just give us your comments and your questions. Give us your feedback, and just let us know what you're thinking or any questions about this storm system. And my thing just froze. When do you guys want to go ahead and start talking here, please do, because my thing just froze up on this.
Well, something we have to keep an eye on. We were talking about thunderstorms. Something that's been affecting the Philippines the past few days is the amount of rainfall they've been seeing the past several days, anyway, across the Visayas and Luzon. As the Habagat is enhanced, we could see. We're already seeing issues with flooding out there. Any issues with, the storm drain situation out there. We can see quite a bit more flooding, at least in the Philippines. Although well removed from the storm system, we could see quite a bit of flooding out that way.
Well, talking about Philippines, let's ask Michael, who just came in, our correspondent.
Can you hear me?
Just outside of Manila. Yes, you can. Hey, thanks for jumping in. I didn't expect you.
Guys, actually, I jumped in because I just started looking at some graphics from Rambi Noah. Hopefully I can share those on here real quick. One of them is, of course, the Dvorak, and I know Mike would really like to see this. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can just copy and then share with this right here. I don't know. Where can I put this? Okay, maybe paste. Okay, let me try that. And then enter. It's just a link. Aye.
All right. Well, while you
I got it.
All right, you got it now?
It's anyway. You go to Rambi. Check out the Dvorak. Also, guys, the other thing I wanted to bring up. Looking at the sea surface temperatures, they did an update at OOZ, and the storm is going to move over a hot spot at 24 Tau. So I guess that's about at 8-9 hours from now. You math wizards would be better at that than me.
It's 400 kilometers out ahead of the storm right now.
Yeah, and I mean, my thoughts are, wow. I mean, this thing is already on the verge of setting records, and now it's getting ready to move over a hot spot. I mean, if it doesn't undergo an eye wall replacement cycle pretty soon, we are going to have a historic situation on our hands, I think.
Well, that is a good point. I'm looking at what you're talking about, actually. Yeah. Well, that would be definitely a pretty... yeah, you just shared this on here. Whoa, that's pretty nasty, actually. It's just the southern extent of the Kuroshio current, like 30 to 32 degrees Celsius on it. Actually,
yeah.
Do you have... what's this right here? There we go. There you go. That's it.
That is it. Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, that would definitely be, and if it does come outside of that eye wall replacement cycle like we were just talking about a second ago and hits that, and that's just prior to interacting with friction on Taiwan, that would definitely allow it to at least maintain that Cat 4, Cat 5 intensity.
Now, I'm a little behind because I've been working today. Has it started undergoing eye wall replacement yet?
Actually, we had this up here, and this is good for people who are just jumping in. This is actually the... I'll put it up on my screen right there. There's the morph microwave imagery, and then the last, half a second of this, and I'm sure if I updated it, it might show a little bit more. The last half a second, you can kind of see that outer eye wall forming up right there. So
Okay.
it does look like it's just starting that cycle, and that takes, what, like 12 hours to usually undergo, right?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, I can see it right there at the end. Hmm.
Yeah. So if that was to take place and then it would hit that, it would definitely blow up. As far as any track change, if anybody's curious about that, right now we're talking about intensity. So if you are in Okinawa or the Philippines, this one it changed the track. Maybe slow it down a little bit because these storm systems, when they hit these pockets, sometimes they do slow down. But I really wouldn't think it would change the track very much. But intensity-wise, this is a really good point, Michael.
Yeah, and of course JTWC already showing this at 150 now, 150 knots. Um, so yeah, that was on the best track advisory, 911 hectopascals.
Here it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the
it,
JT track right there. Now, hey, how about while I got this up, I'll break this down for people because not everybody understands it. They always look at the center line. So you have that outer line here, right? That is the cone of air. Now, the circles, you have three circles. There's the outer one, that darker purple. That is 35 knot winds, tropical storm strength winds. Then you have that second, the circle in between the middle one and the outer one. That's the 50 knot winds. Now, when you're talking about military bases, that's important because JTWC is mainly for the U.S. military. That's 50 knot winds. That's when we're talking about T-cores. And then you got the inner one right there, and that's the 65 knots. So that is a pretty, that's like over 100 kilometer threshold of 65 knot winds. This has a pretty nasty wind field on it.
it does.
I mean, that would be tropical storm strength winds if it made landfall around Hulan City, all the way from Taipei, extending all the way down towards the southern extent of Taiwan.
Yeah, it looks like with this track, although the Philippines weather agency Pagasa was good and proactive, okay, for once, in going ahead and issuing a bulletin for Batanes Islands up there in the Luzon Strait. From well, if the storm follows this path and these projections here, it looks like they'll actually escape any serious effects from it. But we're we're looking forward to the rain here because these things always pull in strong southwest monsoon flow when they pass to the north of us like this, and it'll be one of those 3 or 4 day rains probably, as it slides on through, and probably start up for us sometime tomorrow night, I think.
All right, so this is something I do want to show, and we've touched on Okinawa, Taiwan, and the Philippines. So people are actually asking about in the YouTube chat room, and if you guys are asking on the Facebook page, I'm trying to get those questions and comments. If any of you guys want to check them on any of the Facebook pages, please do, and maybe you can just relay. I'm just watching the YouTube here, and people are asking about China, Shanghai specifically. We got some people from Shanghai and also Korea. Now the good news is this moving a little bit further towards the south. Taiwan's going to take care of this storm system. Fujian is probably going to take care of this storm. And I think that Korea is not going to get impacted as some of the earlier stuff would indicate. And let's even just pull back this this Meteor app here, and I'll just show it to you. It really kind of slows down over the weekend and kind of weakens out. Maybe Korea might get some scattered showers as it does pull through, and it all depends on how long it stays there and how the upper level dynamics work. You could be seeing some heavy showers, but it's not going to be till next week. So for now, expect rain in the Korean Peninsula, but I don't think you're going to see a typhoon. Now the big thing out here for China is this past week. All right, this is pretty nasty. There's over 120 deaths been reported due to rains here, and you can see here in eastern China, 400 to 500 millimeters of precipitation. And Michael, you gonna say something?
No, I'm just, I'm in disbelief because that Mayu has just been really giving those people hell, man. It's just been horrible.
Yeah, and that's one of the big things is eastern, just outside of Shanghai. That's some of the worst flooding. So if this hits Fujian and heads up there towards Anhui, it definitely would result in some significant rainfall. So if we take a look, now, this is actually a video. I got this from CCTV, and I want to share this with you guys. We'll just watch through it really fast. This is incredible. Look at this poor lady here. Now, she does survive this, but she's stuck in these floodwaters, and it's just that is the last place you want to be, and it just kind of gives
Oh
you an
wow.
idea of how. Yeah, right.
That
Oh
looks pretty scary.
yeah, that's crazy.
And this actually a very improvised way of rescuing her. Now, this is just outside of. This is in Guangxi province, so just towards the west of Shanghai. And she's rescued. There she is in a boat, and it was an improvised way of rescuing her. But this just kind of gives you an idea of the last thing they need out here is more rainfall. And unfortunately, it does look like that is going to be the case. There's the 96-hour rainfall accumulation from ECMWF, and the big thing is that just off there towards Fujian and eventually extending to Shanghai, you still could see 200 to 300 millimeters. So if you are out there, the wind's probably not going to be the big issue. It's going to be the rain out here across eastern areas of China. So that's kind of what I really want to address with that. I know a few people were asking about that. Somebody just asked, Casey, wondering about the T-cores will change in Okinawa. You guys want to touch in on that?
Yeah, we've been telling everyone not to expect that we're going to go through a T-core change because the criteria for that is damaging winds. And we really don't expect to have damaging winds here in Okinawa. Though, as you've been touching on, we do expect an awful lot of rain, and that in itself can be pretty bad. We've had situations in the past with some major flooding on Okinawa at times when we've had severe amounts of rain. The best example was Neoguri years ago when I think it was in a 1 hour period we had over a foot of rain on top of saturated ground that we already had, and it just totally flooded out certain areas. Cars were underwater. A couple of military personnel got trapped in buildings and had to be literally cut out through the roof by emergency crews. So the rain is what we're looking for this time. But I don't think we'll be going into any T-core changes. In the end, though, that's not our call. We're just a couple people sitting at home drinking Chuhai and looking at the weather online. So that'll be up to the 18th Wing Commander and his experts. The meteorologists in charge will make those calls. But it really doesn't look like we'll have the winds necessary for any kind of T-core change.
And like we were just saying, if anybody is just joining in, that can be a good thing. It is, of course, a good thing, but it also can be dangerous because despite the fact that the winds are there, we got the several thousand kilometer in diameter storm system spinning just down there towards the southwest, and the result of that is going to be some very, very high waves. So we were just mentioning a second ago, if anybody just joined in, that despite the winds being a little bit calm, just stay away from coastal areas because there's still going to be some pretty rough surf out there.
Hey, I just saw one question pop up here that I'm curious about as well, and they're asking if we can expect the rest of typhoon season to be as quiet as the first part. And what I've been reading about how things go historically with this transition from an El Nino into a La Nina is that you typically get this quiet first half of the year, and then once things are uncorked, they just kind of explode. So is that the expectation,
Mike,
or
you want
what do
to
you
jump
guys
in on
think?
that?
Yeah, I'll tackle that one. So a lot of the times when we're looking at seasons, we'll take a look at the broader picture and compare it to previous seasons. This particular year, we're coming off of a very strong El Nino, moving into a La Nina, and so looking back at a couple of the previous years that fit into that scenario, and one that jumps out was the strong El Nino of 1982 into 1983. Very similar situation where the first 6 months of 1983, it was dead. There were no tropical cyclones, and it wasn't until and Robert, you may remember it exactly, but it was very late June or very early July we got that first tropical cyclone, much like this year. And that's just one example. There's a few others where it was dead for the first half of the year. The second half of the year, just like you were saying, Jason, it does kind of uncork itself, and we do get a very normal, or if not above normal, year in terms of just total activity. So we really do make up for lost time. In terms of tracks, we start to see those shift a little bit further south. So Okinawa and then southward, especially toward the Philippines, a lot more activity than a normal year. So that's something that we'll be expecting for the latter part of this year.
And that's actually something we can kind of see with the enhanced monsoon. That's all that moisture further towards the south. The moisture's there. The big thing is that the Westpac high is just not strong enough yet to keep our storms further south, the subtropical high, and that's allowing this to kind of give just towards the north, so just glimpsing the Philippines and heading off towards Taiwan. And I think this is going to be a year not so much for Tokyo at the very least. Probably not going to see.
Yeah, and it should also be noted in those post El Nino years. Now, whereas Indochina, Vietnam, and the Philippines, Taiwan, southeastern China as well, actually see more landfall impacts. Early in the season, the storms will tend to go a little north until that high sets in. And if you look at some of the tracks in the past seasons, it's actually kind of a common thing. So, whereas it seems to be acting contradictory to what we expect, actually, considering that things are kind of right on track here. We had one little weak depression-like thing, that moved up through the South China Sea, about a month ago. And then another little ripple that tried to act funny, but really didn't do much. It brought a little rain. So it seems to be headed right where it needs to be, considering. I'll have to go into the records and look. But I remember when I was doing my preseason analysis, if you will, I noticed that that whereas Southeastern Asia seemed to bear the brunt of the season mostly, it kind of looked normal until it didn't anymore. Whatever that.
This is what you're talking about, actually, with some of the later seasons. This is actually just some of the information. I want to put this up. This was the second latest start to the season. Kind of interesting little fact right there. Nepartak, July 3rd, July 9th. That was 1998, and as Mike was just mentioning a minute ago, that was coming off in El Nino, 1997. That was like the big one that everybody first started to realize what El Nino was.
Yeah, exactly. 97 moving into 98, 82 into 83. I mean, these are great examples of how this season's really starting to shape up.
So let's see some more of these questions here. We actually got somebody from Taipei, and I really do thank people who are jumping in here from Taipei. If this storm does kind of wrap around, and we've seen that last year where it made landfall in Helian, and actually I'll just put the map up here on the screen just to kind of give you an idea where I'm talking about with the geographical locations, that is. Last year, we had Sodalor there in Hulan, and Yilan, I'm sorry, guys, in Taiwan, if I'm butchering all these, I'm horrible with these cities. Last time I was there, everybody just kept kind of correcting me over and over again. In Yilan County, they got the brunt of this, but even over towards Taipei, actually, what was it in Taipei? There was like a giant ball rolling down the street in Sodalor?
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe some of you guys might remember. If any of you guys watching do remember that, please just let me know so I don't sound like a crazy person. It was one of those just random instances where this huge thing was rolling down the street. And the storm made landfall in central Taiwan, but those rain bands kind of wrapped around towards the northern periphery of the storm. And we're even seeing that with some of the models right now. So if you are out there across northern areas of the island, you still can get those wraparound rain bands even away from that center of circulation. That's actually what makes chasing typhoons in Taiwan. It's kind of tricky. The mountains, of course, they act crazy on these storm systems because they hit the mountains. The rain bands move away from the center of circulation, not just squeezing out the moisture, but it often trips them, and they'll just skip like 100 kilometers north or south.
Yeah, I've seen some weird things happen from those storms that hit Taiwan, reminiscent of storms that hit Dominican Republic in the Atlantic. They'll do that kind of weird job too, because you have very similar type of topography there with just these huge mountains just right out of the water, right in a path. And of course, it's all as those who've studied the science understand. It's all fluid dynamics, so it's about damming and redistribution and all of this kind of thing. But to make a long story short, it looks really weird, man.
Yeah, and it's something. Yeah, it's very tricky, and as far as forecasting these storms, it's always a pain with Taiwan. And that's why I often say, I mean, you take a look at this, and this is the multi-tracks from all the different agencies, right? You got JTWC, Korea, Pagasa, that's the Philippines, China Weather Bureau, and the CWB, Taiwan's Weather Bureau, HKO, Hong Kong, and JMA, and not one person agrees where exactly this is going to come on shore. And that's why we keep on saying you got to follow the track. North of that center of circulation on the east coast will probably be the heaviest rainfall, but if the storm skips, the rain just moves north or south. The winds come with that, and also you got to talk about the wraparound along the western side. But I think this is just a great graphic, kind of giving you the uncertainty.
And I think going back to what we were just talking about, if you notice, maybe it's just a product of the computer models, but every one of those tracks takes a weird jog to the northwest after they hit those mountains, Matt. All of them show a deviation in the path immediately after passing through Taiwan, which goes back into what we were talking about, how hitting that island just completely changes the dynamics of these storms in many cases. A lot of times, long enough to save China, but I don't know if that'll be the case this time. We'll have to see.
There's a question on here on the discussion about the storms always form under Guam or a little southeast of Guam, but not in La Nina years. Do you want to touch on that a little bit about how some of the stronger storms seem to come from Indian Ocean area?
Let's see the question.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've got the 1983 Pacific typhoon season on Wikipedia pulled up on my screen right now. I don't think I can share this, or can I? I don't know. I don't do Google Hangouts much.
All right, guys, if anybody's watching and you don't know how to use Google Hangouts, you're going to get a crash course on how to use Google Hangouts. So on the top left of the screen, there's a screen share button. It's a little green with an arrow on it.
Right.
Click that.
Okay.
And then it should pop up saying you want to use whatever screen is you have.
Okay. Okay. Well, gosh, it's not. Okay, let's see. Okay, maybe I can do it this way. Are you seeing that?
I sure am. There you go. There's your wiki page.
Okay, now here we go, guys. Wiki, we know Jason is in the wiki and many of our other esteemed colleagues, so I do trust the information from here. Let's go into our first storm of the season, which was Sarah. You can look at this track, see where it formed. Here it is. It is definitely out there down around Palau or so, very far south. Trips over the Philippines and it really turns into much ado about nothing. The second storm that formed that year formed July 9, which is close to our time of year right now. Again, another Philippine storm formed just east of the Philippines and then trucked on up into southeastern China. I don't hear myself. Still there? Okay. Yeah, I'm still there. Good. That was Typhoon Tip. Then we had the third storm of the season that year, Typhoon Vera, also named Bing, another Philippine storm. This time got a little start out there a little further, again, south of Guam. That was what was mentioned earlier. And yeah, I mean, Guam, south of Guam, that's where the ITCC lives. So, I mean, to have storms form out there, that's just kind of how it goes, That's where it really happens. Now, that storm actually got pretty strong. The one I wanted to show you, though, was the next one. It was a Super Typhoon Wayne. That happened July 21st to July 26th, and oh, look where it went. So when we got early in the season, although they were getting pushed down, then suddenly, bloop, one got pushed on up close to Taiwan and into southeastern China. We had another storm immediately after that, August 5 through August 18. We had Typhoon Abby, who did the old recurve up into Tokyo. So, it just goes to show that no matter when we think that we've got a handle on things, nature's going to throw its little secrets and things out there. I'm trying to turn off screen share. Have I done that yet?
That's why we keep you around,
You did
Michael. You did some good quickie.
Geez, now I can't hear.
Quick wiki research there. So. Thank you very much. So climate's kind of working the way it should be right now. So I hope that answers that first question.
Speaking of the quick research, we talked earlier about that maximum wind reading on Ishigaki Island. I looked it up on our old posts. It was August 23rd last year that they had a maximum sustained wind of 160 miles an hour, 255 kilometers per hour on Ishigaki Island.
There you go. That's a lot lower than 355. I think I said it. I was
Yeah,
pretty sure I was overshooting a good 100 kilometers per
but
hour.
looking at this storm and the coastal cities of Taiwan, I mean, they may be experiencing winds in excess of that if this thing keeps building, especially if it takes more energy in from that patch of warm seawater that we were talking about earlier.
This is actually one thing I do want to know, and the winds are definitely a big issue in Taiwan, but I'll show this on the map. Outside of Hulan City, a little bit further off here towards the north, and if they do get winds, this is a blow stuff around. Actually, some of the comments people are talking about with Sodalore last year, they had bikes getting picked up and thrown around. I remember seeing that, and this is actually some video I shot from... Well, that's just some waves from around Hulan. There we go. There's actually, that was dangerous, by the way. That scared me. There's just like this metal flying around everywhere and stuff. I shot that in the middle of the night in the eye wall of Sodalore. The winds definitely can pick up a lot of the light stuff in these coastal cities. But the good news, the bulk of the population is located or behind some of these mountain chains in this inland valley right there, outside of coastal Yilan and Hulin. So that at least helps protect people a little bit. And a lot of areas are a little bit away from the coast, at least as far as homes are concerned. It's unlike, like, let's say Florida in the U.S. where you got million-dollar homes built on the beach. Here people are smart and they kind of push it back up into the mountains a little bit. So that's a plus, I guess. I'm just trying to make a good news out of it, I guess.
I've got a question for the people who are more familiar with Taiwan. Here in Okinawa, you can tell, similar to Ishigaki, that the locals are used to typhoons. They build for the typhoons. I mean, every structure on this island is solid concrete. They're built like bunkers. On the houses on the bases where the military U.S. personnel live, we feel very safe. But I know when you get further into some of the more southern countries, building standards aren't always the same, especially in the areas that have a little more, they're stricken with poverty, they can't necessarily afford some of the better housing. What's it like for Taiwan in these coastal cities?
What I noticed in Taiwan, you guys can jump in a second, it's really a mixed bag. I think it's not as bad as the Philippines. Philippines, there's just whole communities of squatters right along coastal areas. That was one of the big problems with Tacloban when Haiyan made landfall. In Taiwan, it's pretty decent infrastructure there. There's a lot of sturdy buildings. But as somebody just posted here, there is still a lot of tin roofs on a lot of these buildings too. And especially awnings, there's tin roofs. That stuff starts flying around. It becomes very dangerous. Plus, there's a lot of homes built on mountainsides, so you have to talk about landslides. The infrastructure is definitely there. It's been improving drastically over the last 20 years. I was talking to people about 10 years ago, and it was a totally different story out there. It's been improving. But I don't think, from seeing typhoons across these countries, I think the infrastructure is not as much as the southwestern islands of Japan. As you mentioned, it's a bomb shelter there. I mean, you don't have to even prepare. You just sit there and wait for 300-kilometer-per-hour winds and nothing happens. How about you guys? Have you been through Taiwan?
I've not, other than just a layover.
Yeah. I guess I'm the only one who's been in a Foon there in Taiwan. So some of the people that are watching, West Side is a mix of concrete and steel homes. This is a comment from somebody. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. You make us sound smarter when you give us some good infrastructure reports here. So West Side is a mix of concrete and steel homes because they are worried about typhoons on the west side. Excuse me, West Side is a mix.
Okay. And before we started the broadcast, we were talking a little bit about how some of the storm chasers that we know are on their way to Taiwan right now. So I'm guessing we'll probably be seeing some video coming out of there before too long.
Yeah, actually, I just saw somebody asked about that too. Thanks for bringing that up. Hey, I'm going to put some information up on the screen here. Hopefully I can. If you do want to follow the guys who are chasing this, check out iCyclone. It's literally spelled like that, I, cyclone. On Facebook, Josh Morgan's going to be in this storm. He's flying from the States right now, rushing in there last second. James Reynolds as well with Earth's Uncut TV. I know he's going into this storm. He's also with Mark. He had to actually fly from Tokyo to Hong Kong and now back to Taipei, I do believe. I know he's been watching it closely. He was talking about Ishigaki, but I bet he's going to Taipei. So, yeah, have you guys seen any updates from them?
I have not. I saw from Josh where he mentioned he was getting on the plane and heading out. But I'm looking forward to seeing what they've got. And of course, we know these two are really the best in the world. So we should really be getting some good stuff here in the next 12, 24 hours.
Yeah, actually, that's what I was talking about with these guys. I mean, James included. We're talking about going into Typhoon Eye walls, and people that are new to the Western Pacific. You may know Jim Cantori back in the States with the Weather Channel, and a lot of people think of him as the eye wall captain with Tropical Systems, and he does some amazing stuff. But James, I have to give him props. He's been in nearly 40 eye walls. I'm not sure that I knew it was just over 30 last year, and last year he got into a lot of them. So he's been nearly 40 eye walls, and we're talking about Haiyan, as well as many other Cat 5s up and down this area. And then Josh. He's been in the three strongest storms in each basin. He went through Wilma, Patricia, and Haiyan. So these are the guys you want to follow, right?
Oh, yeah.
I can't believe I don't know how Josh scored all three of those. Wilma, strongest in Atlantic. Patricia, strongest on record. And Haiyan, which is not officially the strongest on record because records out here are a pain in the butt, but I would say it is.
Yeah, well, yeah, you won't convince people in the Philippines of that because every one of them will tell you. I mean, there was such a great loss of life down there. That's one of those storms that will never, ever leave the memory of the people in this country. So, you know, and I think when it comes down to that, it's just semantics anyway.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, James just put out, he's hitting I'm checking out his Twitter right now, and that's basically it. He is in SUAO, Suo, on his way to Hualien. So, as I was talking, goodness. I'll put it up here on the map. If any of you are in Hualien City, or you might see him kind of cruise by. Maybe he's going to be cruising by Elon down here. And that's probably the best spot for him to be. That gives him the time to waver towards the north or towards the south. Big thing with Taiwan, and we've seen in the past, this area right here, this is all a national park up in here. That area gets landslides like nobody's business. And almost every time we get a storm coming on shore, it makes landslides and it shuts off that road. So people south of that, yeah, be prepared for some delays with travels later this week. I'm sure if this storm hits hard enough, that'll be your least of your worries, but something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to note the population, the way it's put up there on Taiwan. Clearly, of course, all throughout history, these people have been slammed by typhoons. I mean, this is nothing new to them. And there's just virtually nothing on the East Coast. Just these little towns, and then everything is just piled up there on the West Coast. It's just like it's like one city all the way from Taipei down to whatever that town is down there. Was that Kaohsiung or whatever that is? But it's just like solid down that west side and nothing on the east side. So, you know, they know. They are probably as much an expert as anyone in the Westpac on typhoons. As a matter of fact, I've even said the last couple of days, Rob, as you've seen, you know, really, if you're going to be a storm chaser, Taiwan would be the place to live because many times you wouldn't even have to go anywhere. You can sit there and go through 2 or 3 of them, you know, in one season.
And also, it is kind of just the center area. I mean, it's a little short flight to anywhere else that gets hit.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this is another question, or some things people are pointing out. And actually, for Heather and Jeff, sorry guys, thanks for staying in here. We've been going on for an hour now. I'll probably wrap up here in the near future once questions kind of dumb down. But for new people in Okinawa and people who are watching from overseas, we were talking about the infrastructure, right? And I'm just seeing a lot of comments here, people talking about this. The infrastructure in Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines. The Philippines, for some part, because people just can't evacuate. But in the U.S., when a storm like this, let's say a Category 4 or 5 storm is headed towards Jacksonville, Florida, what is the thing that happens at this point in the game? What's the biggest topic of conversation?
Everyone knows.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, what we always see is people are boarding up their windows. They're trying to do whatever they can do. And I tell you what, it's always been a mystery to me why in that part of the United States we still insist on building these wooden framed houses. Especially, there was, I can't remember the name of the hurricane that came through years ago, went right across the center of Florida. And in the aftermath, the big issue was that because of the damage that was done, it revealed all the shoddy workmanship that had been done on a lot of these houses, where they were using 1/3 of the number of nails that were really required to hold the roof on and this kind of thing. And I think we could learn a few things from the Japanese and other countries when it comes to that. You know, they build these homes to survive and to last, and they do better in the extremes of temperatures and summer and winter and everything else. We feel incredibly safe. Now, when we first moved here, we weren't so sure. But then we went through our first couple of typhoons and realized, okay, yeah, we're going to be fine. I would not feel so safe in one of those, condos in Florida getting hit by a Category 4 or 5 hurricane.
Well, that's actually one of the things that I see a lot of people asking about when they first just move here or from overseas, is they're asking, well, should we evacuate? And on these islands, there's just nowhere to evacuate to. Taiwan, for that most part, I mean, you can go from the east side of the island to the west side of the island, but a lot of people just, I mean, you're still going to get a little bit of the less winds, but not too much more. So evacuation's typically not in the question.
When you're on Okinawa, you're absolutely right. There is nowhere to go. We're on an island that is relatively small, and the best place you can be, honestly, is inside one of these big structures. And they've had a lot of experience, so they know how to build these things to last. That's what we've learned over the 3 years that we've been here. You guys have a lot more experience, some of you, I know.
Yeah, we're just we're learning, all of us, as we go. As you can tell, we're all foreigners in here, but we all have been here long enough, and we're learning still and trying to make the best of this. Okay, we've been running this for a good hour. Still some questions coming through, but I'm sure we can kind of just answer them in the comment section after this is over with. I just want to give people a quick little recap. If you're just joining in, we are still talking about our tropical system here. This is Typhoon Neparak, still moving off here towards the northwest. Warnings really still expected to be in place out here across eastern Taiwan. That's where we're expecting that landfall. The big issue is going to be the rainfall, and definitely as we look ahead, the big threat is going to be that threat of flooding and landslides across the eastern seaboards. All depends on exactly where this makes landfall, but right now, still uncertainty in that. We know that it's going to be Taiwan. If you are in the southern Japanese islands, extending over here towards Okinawa, you still probably want to keep a close eye on that. Those outer rain bands are going to continue to push through. Definitely bring some heavy rain showers with it. Maybe some gusty winds plus the high surf. Not to mention down towards the south in the Philippines, we're talking about that enhanced monsoonal flow wrapping around the southern periphery of the storm. So from Manila down towards Cebu, yeah, you could be seeing some scattered showers here as we go ahead into Thursday and Friday. Just that river of moisture kind of wrapping around our storm. You guys want to say anything before we shut it off?
Well, I'm just glad that you invited me in to be here, and I've even learned a few things, and I hope everybody's safe as we get through this storm. It's going to be a doozy.
Mike?
Now, more I can say on top of that, it's just going to be an interesting next 24 hours with this system.
And yeah, Heather, Jeff?
Well, as he said, thanks for inviting us along, and we look forward to watching the storm from afar. But we are going to be watching it very closely in case anything does happen here that might affect anyone who lives in Okinawa, and to let the newbies know that you'll be fine, you'll be safe, just stay inside.
Heather, you want to share your little mug there? Give you a little.
Here, I've got it.
Oh, you got it, Jeff.
So,
All
yeah,
right. So Jeff and
this,
Heather run the Okinawa Typhoon Picks and Info Facebook page. If you guys ever do check that out,
there we
pretty
go.
good Facebook page. Definitely a lot of good information. Their team Bring It On. So that's their confidence with the buildings in Okinawa really embodied
Yeah.
in that right there.
We wouldn't promote that at all. We don't even really promote it. It's just kind of the division that seems to run through our page, where you've got half of the people who are saying, "Oh, I want to see a great typhoon, bring it on," and then the other people are just, "No, please spare us, please spare us, just make it go somewhere else." Yeah. But the last thing we want to say is Sparky the weather dog would like to tell everybody hello.
All right, that's another gimmick they got going on. Their dog, pretty popular, pretty famous. All right, guys, thanks very much for joining in. I really do appreciate it. I'm happy, and we had a pretty good viewership. This was up to about 100 people at one time, so I'm happy that there's such a great amount of comments and questions coming through. Sometimes we go on these hangouts, and it's like 2 comments, and it's basically us just jabbering to each other about weather, which we're cool with. We're all weather geeks here, so this is tons of fun. But it's better when we know that the information is useful and it's getting to some of you, so
Yeah.
do appreciate it. All right, so yeah, check out Western Pacific Weather, also our Facebook page. Don't forget Pacific Typhoon Season Facebook page. Jason, he's been in the hangout. He hasn't said anything because his camera's broken, but that's with the Jason on the bottom of the screen, if you can see that on the YouTube page, that he's from Pacific Typhoon Season as well, and pretty good Facebook page to get some information out of. So yeah, thanks for watching. As always, stay safe out there. Have a good night.
Good night.
Peace.